Hello, Larry. How are you doing?
I'm fine. I'm looking at you on the TV, and I don't see your mouth moving.
Yeah, I was not saying anything.
Oh, but so is what I'm so like, is it just always happens. Hold on.
Yeah.
We'll be down in a second. Bye. Let me call you back.
Of course. Publicity shots at Corvox. Hey, buddy. I'm broadcasting right now, so anything you say will be in the
stream.
in the stream.
Biden won. Fuck yeah.
You just said that live on the internet. That's good. Cool, man.
Anyway, just wanted to.
Yeah, Larry's gonna call in a minute, so I gotta clear the line, but that's good.
Cheers, buddy.
Yeah, we'll talk soon.
Even Fox is admitting it now.
All right. You know it's real. All right, take care. Okay, that's a good shot. Let's go with that. Partial screenshot. Slightly different Publicity shots. Rotate the ship so that we get lit. Taking some publicity shots, I guess you'd call them, from the ship.
Now, how is it that you're talking to me and I'm seeing you on the screen in the upper left-hand corner, but I don't see you talking?
That's the lag.
That long?
Yeah, it's very, very long today.
Oh, yeah, you're okay. Yeah, I got you just above me now.
Yeah, it's super long lag today. Oh, really? Well, we may want to mute you. We may want to mute me on the TV, just so that it doesn't confuse you.
Oh, did you say you did?
Well, I was saying you may want to, or at least turn it down.
Oh, no, yeah, definitely. I think this happened last time.
Yeah, and I haven't solved those problems yet. That's on me, because I had a distracted week.
That's okay. Go to that.
All right, let's get back into the ship, and we had just discovered a solar system that nobody had ever been to before. And we had explored one planet and picked up some resources on the planet, and that's when we got to the topic of hunter-gatherer. And that's where we switched topics and we talked about some of the art that you had bought. And one of the pieces that you bought was this, which you'll see on your screen in a few seconds. This is the picture you sent me. And what was this again? The beetle.
I see a cosmic calendar. I saw a cosmic calendar. I think I saw on the calendar. I think I saw. There it is. Yep. That is it.
Okay.
That is it.
And what I wanted to do for people who had listened last time, or for our own gratification, was then go back to that cosmic calendar and try to find where. So we most of the calendar is basically, the formation of the stars and the planets. And then here in December, you get trace fossils, mammals around the 26th of December, and then you get humans and chimpanzees split around 8 p.m. on the 31st. So,
I see. Yeah.
And then in the final minute, that's where we get the peak of the last ice age, right?
Right.
And so, how old did you say these were?
Well, the two that I happen to have is the smaller one is from the eastern Sahara, back from when it was grassland, and it would seem to be around a 250,000 years old. And the other is from northeastern Ethiopia, and is the date given was 1.4 million years old.
Okay. So let's see.
And the small one was probably either Homo erectus or Homo neanderthalis, and they don't know about the truly ancient one. There's one of the proposed answers is the whatever the full name is for the one for the oldest, I guess the oldest human, the oldest skeleton. The one they call Lucy.
Right.
And the second half of it, like homo, and then a word that looks sort of like it's Australian, but it is something else.
Yeah, Australopithecus.
Oh, okay, there you go.
Right, maybe.
But they're not sure. But they're not sure about that. It might be from a hominid that hasn't been found yet.
Yeah, so somewhere between 9:20 p.m. and 10:30 p.m. Actually, no, 9:20 p.m. and 11:52 p.m. is when your artifact is from on the cosmic calendar, and that's been around that long, and it's pretty amazing. I mean, it really is to think about it, that was being held by somebody. I brought it into my session with Deb. I said, first of all, I said, how do you feel about touching something? He's like, you have to wash your hand. I'd rather not wash this. And he said, oh, and he held it, and I said, it's very heavy too. And at least the Lucy's hominid, I mean, was like 4 feet tall. Right.
This thing is a good 3 pounds, at least it's a full handful for me. And just the thought that it comes from a time when animals, one particular branch of animals, was beginning to be able to conceptualize something and imagine something that didn't exist, that could be made out of something that was available to them, and see that and have that cognitive imagination to see what that they could be shaped into another thing.
Right.
It sounds so minor, and one of the things from most of the animal kingdom, conceptualize change, made out of what's available.
It's amazing, Larry, and that's why I wanted to start off with that, just to kind of pick up the thread, because here we are playing a space game, talking about the future of humanity, and productive dialogue is the tool that we're kind of exploring. And I just was like, oh, I gotta go back to that last week. I did.
Find that fun.
It was, yeah.
I've been looking at auctions of old things. I wrote books because I finally got on computers in 1999. But I did auction houses in New York. I bought my first engine when I was a freshman in college. And I've never seen one that old offered for sale anywhere. Purchased it and purchased the gallery in Jerusalem, where antiquity gallery has discovered one of the two I had on where they put up public domain books. I found some old guy in Jerusalem that they're gonna buy, whatever and one the one sold there.
Wow.
So I have some reason to believe it,
Yeah, that it's that there's legitimacy to the find.
And that nobody, and it's so funny, what things sell for. A Greek helmet will sell for $250,000 because they're sort of in a hedge fund manager like
Right.
That rock to me more amazing than a helmet, and nobody was willing to about $100. But I think the people who go into these antiquity online auctions are mostly, they're not mostly collections of paleolithic things, unless they're pretty, like a classic idol.
Right.
But there's just not a lot of people that look at what stuff up there and they go, I got it. So they got very flattered. I was amazed that I got it.
So, I may have some work coming up next week. Get a proposal done by Monday. And it's an experiment in doing dialogue properly. A young company wants to develop a relations.
So I thought for a second you said dialogue promptly, and I thought somehow it was related to the Dewey Decimal System.
But it was interesting just to hit it off, and it was just a social call. And before we knew it, we were talking about a contract. So that's how it goes.
something else, but see the opportunity there. But you're not totally. It wasn't the focus thing or the start thing. I told you my whole career at CBS can be traced back to the fact that I was nice to a man in middle management at CBS who loved opera, and I helped him once a year to buy the lunch once a year. And when I was between jobs at 30, that's not shit. Thinking, well, I still got there as well. A phone rang, and it was this guy volunteer. Boy, he was hard to find. That tells me that we have a very unusual situation here when we're almost never allowed to hire from the outside. Always has to be through the ranks, but they set up CBS cable and they so many people so bad that I have a window when I can hire from the outside if you want to come work at CBS.
Wow.
And it was, you know, and when something that had nothing to do with my career, you know, I just did it because something else at where I worked was a friend of theirs, and they asked me if I knew it, there was no trouble to do it, so I did it. You know, and so much happens through indirection.
Well, I mean, it's like what I did to end up at Hallmark Entertainment, right? You know that.
Well, I remember you telling me that you said to George, and he said, you know, what do you have to offer? You said, what do you need?
Yeah, what do you need? And George was like, I'd like to talk to you after, right? But what you may not know is that
I can do it or I can learn it.
yeah. And what's funny is that I entered the room on a kind of a lark. I didn't. Everybody else in that room had like scheduled it and planned to be there because they knew George was coming to campus. I just happened to be walking by, and I said, "Oh, Hollywood. Okay, I want to check that out." And I walked in.
No, you didn't tell me that part. That's crazy.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Sally Field. That made her famous, which were in the 1950s, and I can't even remember whether they were like H movies or I know exactly. But she played Gidget in 3 or 4 movies.
Yeah, the Gidget movies, yeah.
And it was decided to make it into a TV series. And she just graduated from high school, and her stepfather was Jock Mahoney, who was a second-tier contract player in Hollywood. Enough to make a couple of stars. Like, I can get you into the suburbs, like, you know, acting class program. She said, okay. So she went through her first day of acting class, and she was walking across the parking lot, and she got to go back to her garden. The man came running up to her and said, are you available? She said, what? Are you an actress? She said, well, I'm studying that. He said, we just want to be there. You know, that series that we're going to call Gidget. Look perfect. Come on over to the van and just read a few lines. And she went home, and they said, what happened? And she said, oh, I got the lead in the TV too.
Can you imagine the father's reaction?
Rationale for why she was applying was she turned that down, and again was ever unit it. That Spielberg,
Hey, it's your homie. Sorry, it's your home. I know you don't like it when I call myself your homie. So I have some favors to ask you. Could you get rid of a few chairs in the living?
and went there every day and pushed papers around.
Right.
And finally somebody asked him, what do you do? And he gave some answer. I think it was a little bit like what you are doing. Pretty much everything. What do you need? And,
Yeah. Yeah.
And next thing he was an associate producer on something.
It's funny that the corporate world is kind of going through that right now too, because I've always gravitated towards places where there'd be more opportunity, right? Where I could do that kind of activity, where I could just, recognize a need and then just kind of own it, right?
Right.
And so that kind of defined a lot of my career, but I'm finding that I'm coaching some young people now who have similar, there's somebody I hope you meet in the future, Jasper Yao, who's been on some early tests of this system, and is thinking of writing some code for us to get Corvox running correctly. Oh, we found a planet with geological. Let's see what we get. And you'll see it on the screen in a few seconds. You see the top right corner where it says features. It says
Right.
geological likely refining scan. And I'm just leaving it on there until that scan is done. That means this is a planet that we might go to. So there are 20 locations on this planet where most likely silicate vapor geysers have spewed some kind of material that we can use.
Well, I see where it says features and geological.
And then 20.
I see the word likely after it.
Yeah, that's because there's parentheses around the 20.
Now I see 20. Now I see 20. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and that's so it might be a signal that something interesting there.
Yeah, and it actually doesn't have bad gravity either. It's a pretty big planet because 0.1 Earth gravity is actually something that you can deal with, as opposed to 0.0001, which then it's very hard to keep the buggy on the planet, right? So this will be good. We're gonna go here. So let's head over there. Where is that?
Okay, first officer.
I'm sorry, Commander. You're right. We should make the decision. I'm usurping command.
No, I told you I was taught by the man who I didn't realize I was doing it, but I was learning how to management from my dad, who did it so well that they were taught that a good manager does not just make decisions; they make decision makers.
Right.
And so you were doing exactly what you were supposed to do. I had one boss at CBS, my last boss before I left CBS. It made it really hard to leave. It was, for other reasons, it was an opportunity to come up with that at Hallmark, that would never be an opportunity like it anywhere else, because the Halmy, it was only Halmy.
Right.
Nobody else did. But usually when you left the network, your job was to go out and sell, shows, and I was horrible at that. Bob could sell anything. The problem was he often sold things which
he couldn't make.
You look at, how the fuck are you supposed to make this into a movie?
Right.
And I was good at taking shit and turning it into at least the illusion of Shinola. It was the happiest I've been at CBS. We had gone back to number one. The best offer they'd ever made to somebody at my level to keep me. But so it was hard to leave. But that was the one time my immediate boss just let me do my job.
Yep, that's amazing.
He didn't. I didn't have to always go. Let me run that by John.
Mm-hmm. You could just do your job and then tell John what you did. It's good.
When when I first got promoted to the level where you're in the room alone with producers and writers talking about a script, it was a movie that had been greenlit, and we were now at the stage of picking some of the key creative people, including composers. And one of at that point, I reported to a woman, Nancy, who was one of the many VPs there, and she had reminded us all once at a meeting that we were to always check with her about composers before we said okay to somebody. And whatever movie I was working on, the people came back and said they wanted to use, and it was somebody like Conti, the guy who wrote Rocky. It was somebody that PBS loved and would I knew would say yes to, and I came within a quarter of a whisker of saying okay, but I thought no, I have to ask Nancy, and so I said I'll get back to you later in the day. And after a staff meeting, I walked up to her, and it was sort of like Crime and Punishment. I felt so guilty for having almost just gone ahead and said yes. I said, Nancy, I approved a composer. She said, Larry, I told you you're not supposed to do that. And then I said, well, actually I didn't. And I told her who it was, and she said, Mark Snow was his name. But she said, I thought, this was like my second week in the promoted job. She must think I'm an idiot. I approved a composer. Well, you're not supposed to do that. Well, actually, I did.
I just, in my mind, I've approved a composer.
Now enough to make me confess it to you.
Oh, man. Weird that these two planets are so close together, actually. This is like they're in a really tight orbit with each other. I didn't realize that when we were headed here.
And the smaller one is the one we've been looking at, right? Yeah.
The one that's further out, yeah. One is only 4 million meters away, and the other one is 12 million meters away. So, but we're going to scan this one anyway because why not? So, just going to, oops, I missed. We're sending out probes to probe the surface of this planet in greater detail. It reminds me of a friend of mine, Donna. When she got promoted, she was working with some very high-powered people at Microsoft, and she was attending meetings and going through all of the steps, and she was very stressed. And at one point, she kind of was like getting a little overwhelmed, and the boss noticed, the VP, and he said, "What's wrong, Donna? What's going on?" And she said, "Well, I know that I'm going to do some of the most amazing things you've ever seen, and also some of the stupidest things you've ever seen, and I just don't know which one's going to happen first."
That's a wonderful remark.
And
partly because it sort of sets you up so that if you do something stupid, it's like a version of what I told you that in the French you can be so snotty about foreigners speaking their language. Well, one of the ultimate put downs in French is the person speaks French like a Spanish cow.
Right.
And that I would when I was in France and starting a conversation, when the first time I kind of stumbled or paused, I would stop and say, "Please forgive me, I speak French like a Spanish cow." And at which point they would immediately be charmed.
Right.
Because I had taken care of insulting myself.
Right. They didn't need to do it for me.
No. Stop, man.
Yeah. C'est bien.
How can you do that when Larry McMurtry told me that my work was not hideously unacceptable, and I told him it was the nicest compliment I'd ever received, which it was.
Yep.
In a work situation. It started with my asking him if he would allow me to try and edit something he said he couldn't edit, and then I said, "And when you read it and hate it, just try to not be mad at it."
Yeah.
Which was that was what took the pressure off. But both.
Well, it's so funny because I try to explain, I try to create situations in the work environment where decision makers and I are allowed to produce a bad version of something. And this whole myth that you have to get it right. It's so much faster and better to look at something wrong and then fix it than it is to remain isolated in our brains, separate. And me, like whoever's the superior and whoever's the junior, it doesn't matter. You're both stuck with different things in your brain, and it's hard to communicate. Now, obviously, if you've been working together a long time, a lot of those problems go away. But in the beginning, when you're getting to know somebody, it's so much faster to just produce exactly the wrong thing.
It gives you something to work from.
Right.
One of the reasons I did not become a writer was because faced with a blank piece of paper, I would just sit there and stare at it.
Right.
But if you put something down in front of me that was a mess, I go, oh no, not like that.
Right.
You didn't do this. I was good at taking whatever it was there and making it as better as possible with the people involved. But the initial leap, I was just I needed somebody else to start it, so that I could go, no, not like that.
Right. Well, my sister once, when she was trying to work in animation before she became a part of technology at NBC, she was working on these, 10-minute short cartoons about saving the planet, about, environmental cartoons, right? And at one point she needed a punch-up scriptwriter. And so she called me because she had a short deadline and she needed to turn it around. And I was working at the time, but, I can punch up a 10-minute script. It's like just stay up late that night, And so I got home from work and I just tried to look at what it is that the writer was trying to accomplish, and then said, okay, I'll just make it sharper, tighter, better, change the order of things, cut things that don't really accomplish their goal. And submitted it back. And later on, that episode won some sort of silly award. And the guy who'd written it was the creator of the show. And he told Kia, my sister, he said, that was the best punch-up for the whole series.
Wow.
He said everything that was edited to add value. It wasn't like a writer trying to wrest control. It was a writer.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, you were just trying to add value. And that was it,
That's an unusually... that's an unusual... Whoever that person was is unusual in the business, because the ability to allow someone else to work on their words or baby, and see that it has added value is not universal.
Yeah, I think there's something about animation that demands tighter and tighter sentences, especially in a 10-minute.
I think the best storytelling on TV and in the movies is in animation.
Yeah,
I think the Toy Story series is some of the best storytelling that I ever encountered in terms of accomplishing everything that you're supposed to try to accomplish in terms of setups and payoffs and setting up jeopardy situations which is impossible to get out of, but when you do get out of it, it isn't because you found a magic door that just happens to, it'd be thrown into the script at the last second.
Right. No, not as many MacGuffins, and yeah, exactly.
Yeah, when the Martians saved everybody from whatever fiery furnace they were going in.
Right.
But a half an hour ago we saw the Martians say, "We're going to go check around."
Yeah.
And so it was actually set up. It wasn't just, "Oh, thank God there were Martians."
Right. No. It would. Yeah.
Most of the scripts that I would work or at least a high proportion of them, at some point the writer would paint themselves into a corner.
Right.
And the way they would try to get out of it would be it would literally be something like, "Oh, I forgot to tell you this is actually a secret panel."
Yeah.
That if you knock in this particular code will open it.
Right.
I said, well, if you're gonna do that,
you
better drop it. You better drop it in about half an hour earlier in some other context. Make it a secret panel in another part of the house or something.
Right.
So at least you set up the concept. There's this thing, the willing suspension of disbelief.
Right.
Is what storytelling is about. But you have to then be, once people have made that leap into a willing suspension of disbelief, you have to be true to your own world that you've created.
Right.
You can't out of convenience have things happen that in the world you created wouldn't happen. And frequently, especially when there's deadlines, is a great temptation to do that.
And we can see it in almost every show we watch. You can see when deadlines get tighter on the writers because they adhere to the formulas more tightly, and they claim that a dramatic shift isn't a MacGuffin, but it's obviously just a MacGuffin, right? It's like a Deus Ex Machina masquerading as a dramatic shift for a character, right?
Right.
And you're like, no, you didn't just suddenly hate the person that you loved.
I didn't watch Game of Thrones, but I think that I'm citing the right series. I just remember reading a review where some character in it did a major 180-degree turnaround in terms of character in the last episode, in order for the last episode to end the way they wanted it to, without any attempt to explain why all of a sudden they behave completely differently than they've ever behaved before.
Right. Yeah. No. Every show almost. That's actually, in my mind, the difference between a world-class show and a show that is just a show. I mean, when I try to recommend things that I say are seriously good as opposed to just entertaining, that's my criteria, is whether or not they kept it believable, right?
Yeah.
So here's a problem in the game. I want to get these crystalline fragments, and I want to shoot my laser at the crystalline fragments, but we're too close to the ship. And one of the things that the buggy does automatically when you're close to the ship is it stows the turret which the guns are on. So above me right now, the guns are visible, but they're shrunk down so that we can get underneath the ship without scraping the top.
I see. That's the reason. Okay.
Right. So in order to fix the situation and get the crystalline fragments, I have to send the ship away and send it on autopilot away. So there it goes. And hopefully it'll come back and pick us up when I ask it to. That doesn't always work correctly. And then now, when I fire the lasers, it'll fire. Sorry to interrupt, but
No.
Very important.
Not interrupt. You're doing what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, very important space exploration stuff. So
you made me when you said it. Hopefully, it will be around to come back to pick us up when we need it. Reminded me of one of my Call Me trips where we all I know is you flew to Nairobi then you got on a small plane and flew for an hour north in something, and then you got in a Land Rover and drove over hard pan, high desert that was bumpy enough that I had a bruise behind. I literally bruised behind for a week afterwards. At some point, I had to go back to Nairobi for some business that only I had to go, and so Bob drove me to this spot where a plane could land, and it was a camel dip station. I may have told you this story. It was like a above ground swimming pool made of iron with steps on either end, and herdsmen would bring their camels there to dip them in basically insecticide.
Right.
And there was a hovel next to it where the camel dip station manager and family lived, and it literally was like a shack, with some tattered white material in the windows that were the remnants of curtains.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just dropped off with my suitcase, and I saw these little eyes looking out of the house at me, and I'm just standing there hearing the wind going, and thinking, if a plane doesn't come and land and get me, I'm going to have to go over and knock on the door of that place and ask them to take me in, because I don't have a single survival skill that's of any use where I am.
It's funny when you tell that story. All I can think of is that movie that we made while I was there called Elephant Boy, but I'm sure that wasn't connected.
Elephant Boy.
Yeah, and then I had to hang out with the baby elephant in the parking lot at the quote-unquote premiere. I say quote-unquote because it was a TV movie, so premiere is a bit of a stretch. But and I loved that elephant. It was awesome.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I still have pictures of me with the elephant.
Yes, there were moments I say that bird. I never got to spend time with a baby elephant.
The baby elephant was very nice. The baby elephant took a liking to me and said, but the trunk is you have to watch it. They'll go into your pockets. They're just
Really?
They're very dexterous and smart, and they know where you keep things. And so I had to keep checking my wallet. I had to keep checking. This was a tough little baby elephant, let me say. But
I think they're one of the species where there seems to be a general agreement that dolphins are aware they exist.
yes.
And I'm trying. I off the top of my head, I can't remember what it is. And elephants are by more people than not considered to also be self-aware.
Yes.
They said you can actually watch a herd of elephants in a stress situation like a drought. You can see them have an argument about what direction to head, and sometimes they'll split in two, and because there's two different groups that have different opinions,
Right.
and go up, but they seem to be aware that they exist.
Well, I just learned that crows have their own sort of legal system today.
Really?
Crows and ravens, what they'll do is, if you're like a bad crow, you're what you're doing is, like crows, for instance, they'll steal food from anything, right? I mean, that's part of their
Right.
survival skill set. But it's really not very helpful if you steal food from baby crows, right? Like, if you're the kind of crow that would steal food from a baby crow or a young crow, then the other crows form a circle around you, and they yell at you, and they yell at you, and they yell at you. It's basically like a trial, and based on your crimes, they'll maybe hurt you or maybe just yell at you, and they basically ostracize you enough or lambaste you enough that you stop doing the behavior, that you stop stealing food from the young ones or whatever it is.
Wow, peer pressure.
Yeah, they're using concentrated peer pressure, and it looks like a trial because they form this circle, and there's a certain kind of order to it. It's pretty interesting.
Wow.
Yeah. I read that today on the internet, so it must be true.
Oh, absolutely. was it on the same site with Bonsai Kitten, where you can learn how to use miniaturize the kitten so you can keep it in a bottle?
Yeah, yeah, and a bottle with a completely enclosed environment, so that you never have to touch it.
Yeah, it was like a terrarium, except it's a kitten.
Yeah, it's like a terrarium with a kitten. And then when the kitten dies, the whole terrarium is complete enough that it'll just form another kitten in another 50 years.
It was my friend Dan Berkowitz sent me, I'm sure I told you this story, it's just too bad. Sent me an email from a friend of his that was a great supporter of the theater, and she had sent out a mass mailing with a link to the Bonsai Kitten site, saying, they almost rise up and stop this atrocity. And Dan sent me a copy of it, and I sent him back a less than flattering response concerning this woman, not realizing, because I was reading the computers, that I had copied her.
Oops.
I learned that was the day I learned what reply all means.
Yep. Yeah, it's funny. We all get burned by the reply all at least once or twice. It's funny. I got burned once at Microsoft, and I wrote within a half an hour one of the most eloquent sort of what you might call like damage control emails ever. And my boss wrote back and said, "Wow," I'm like, "You blew it, and then you unscrewed it. I don't know how you did that."
The woman who was in charge of all advertising and promotion for CBS, it was one of the top jobs, said to me once after a staff meeting, I think it was when I already announced I think it was going to all watch you, but I've always admired you doing staff meetings. I've watched you dodge a number of bullets, and I remember thinking, I dodged bullets?
Yeah.
I was unaware that.
Yeah. I didn't think of it as bullet dodging at the time, but okay.
Whatever it was, I didn't realize I was in much jeopardy as that. As apparently I was.
Actually, that's great. It's great when it's like a show where they use that line when the character's like, "Wait, what?" Like, I was what? Did you ever see the? Oh darn! I'm gonna have trouble with the name. It was a Steve Martin, Eddie Murphy film, Bullfinger, I think it was called. Bowfinger.
Yes.
Bowfinger. That's it. Where with the fake movie, and it's traffic on the 405, and he convinces them to run out on the 405. He says they're all stunt drivers.
No, really.
They're all stunt drivers. Really? Because they're drunk?
One of my best friends at Princeton, who was back east now, he lived in Manhattan. He would say, "There's a new Indian place. Let's try it for lunch." And I'd say, "Well, where is it?" He said, "It's just a couple blocks." And we'd go a couple blocks, and then a couple more blocks, and a couple more blocks. And I'd say, how far is it? It's just a couple more. We're at there. It would turn out to be a 40-block walk.
Yeah.
And he was on the east side where mass transportation essentially didn't exist.
Right.
And he was very bold. He was completely above board. But I would say something that I'd say, "Well, I knew if I told you how far away we were, you'd say no."
Yeah.
And the thing that was, I fell for it every time.
Yeah.
He once walked toward me with a full glass of water, clearly intending to just pour it down the front of me.
Right.
And as he started to approach, I went, "John, stop!" And I put my hand. He went, No, it's okay, don't worry. Put your hand up. So I put my hand down, and he did exactly what I thought he was going to do.
It's like my best friend, Chris Oberhauser. When we were kids, he would say, "Don't worry about it." And over time, I learned to associate "don't worry about it" with "worry about it." You know.
If he says "don't worry about it," that's a clue.
That's a clue.
Probably should worry about
That's right. I'd be like, "Chris, you're doing it again. What? You just said don't worry about it." So now I'm paying attention to everything you're doing, and I don't believe a word of it. You know. All right, we're going to try calling the ship back. How do we do that? We can look down.
We're going to try doing what?
We're going to try to recall the ship. And then we're going to keep our eye out.
Unless Holmey's made a better offer.
There we go. Unless, yeah, exactly. Holmey's made a better offer. There we are. It's coming in. It's going to be to our left. All right. And we can get out of here. We can get out of here.
Is that the buggy still?
Yeah, we're in the buggy and we're headed to the main spaceship.
Right. Success.
Yep, the Corvox. And then we're going to leave this system, I think. I don't know. We got to make sure that we finish the scan. Actually, I don't even remember if this is a system that we've discovered or if this is a system that somebody else has already discovered and we're just getting the materials. Oh my gosh. I'm having trouble controlling the buggy. A lot of spin outs there. And we have done 4 jumps today, which means we've covered about 100 light years. Yeah, not much. But that's okay.
I've never told you you must be used to hearing the same stories over, but Jeff pointed out to me that every time you tell a story or recall a memory, it's always a little different.
That's right, because the context is what gives this. You're always making a different point. There's always a lesson to learn from the story. It's just not always the same lesson. That's all.
That's a very good way of putting it. Maybe there still is. There was a once-a-year high-end antique show called the Park Avenue Armory antique show because it took place in an old armory, which was gigantic.
Mm-hmm.
It was also the home to the Explorers Club, so there were all of these stuffed creatures on the walls. But it was just gigantic. But I mean, it's the sort of place where things had 12 zeros after them.
Right.
There was a young couple looking at a small side table that was half circle shaped, like a half moon shape. And the guy looked at the tag and turned it over and looked at it and said to the woman he was with, "These aren't prices. These are distances between planets."
Yep.
I've always remembered. I thought it was a perfect way to put something.
That was good. I like it. These aren't prices. These are distances between planets. I love it. Okay, let's check this system out real quick. Let's see if we have work left to do here or if we're done. No, it was first discovered by Jellica, so we're not the first ever here. Oh, Jellica only discovered the first planet. Truowa, Truowa. I don't even know how to pronounce that. They discovered the rest. So we can go ahead and move on. We're gonna go to... This is the list of targets and this is the one that represents our route to our destination because it has that little extra symbol on it. So I click it and I say switch to this destination, and then our little radar, oh, I turned it off. There, lock destination. Then our little radar tells us whether or not we're pointed at it. And when the white dot is in the center, like that, then I can hit which space? What's it called? The frame shift drive. But what's funny is that the game, the computer says frame shift drive charging. but no matter which voice the computer is speaking in, most people hear friendship drive charging. And so on the internet, everybody just goes, yeah, my friendship drive is having trouble, and so on and so forth. So.
Sounds like the gaming version of a mondegreen.
A what?
A mondegreen. A mondegreen is a mishearing of lyrics to a song.
Oh, okay, yeah.
One of the more classic examples is I don't remember whether I listened to Jimi Hendrix song or somebody from around that. But the last line of the song was "Excuse me while I kiss the sky," and people always heard "Excuse me while I kiss this guy."
Yeah, that's what I heard. I was like, all right, Jimmy, you want to kiss that guy? All right, all right.
And apparently, as he was dying, Admiral Nelson's final words to his Lieutenant Hardy were "Kiss me, Hardy," before he died. But somehow that just didn't fit with the English version of their their colonial empire and their leaders, and so it was turned into Kismet, Hardy, Kismet. Fate words.
Right. Yeah, no. I actually, you remember that song Amadeus?
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, I always heard hot potatoes.
Hot potatoes?
Yeah, hot potatoes, hot potatoes. Hot potatoes, hot potatoes, hot potatoes.
I was in my 40s before I found out that a notary public was not a notary republic. I knew it didn't really ever make sense to me.
Yeah.
But I knew what they did, that was enough. And then finally I saw it in print somewhere and went, oh!
Yeah, notary. Oh.
Notary public. Yeah, I got it. Notary public.
I never understood why it wasn't just called a public notary. Like, why do you go notary public, right? Like,
I guess. Well, it probably dates back to a time when, almost all European civilizations were so divided into castes that this would make maybe this a place where someone who doesn't have a notary on their staff could go.
Right.
Most people up here in larger cities, at least until the 1500s, did not have kitchens. They took their food to a communal bakery oven to have their food cooked.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. And when I was in Burma, and we were in northern Burma, we ate someplace that I really was adventurous, but I thought this is it. I'm going down this time. Because it truly was just a hovel with bubbling cauldrons in it, some of which might have been bubbling for 400 years. But it was jam-packed with clearly people who were not rich, and again, it turned out it was all because they didn't have kitchens. They ate their meals elsewhere, and it was cheap enough that they could afford to. The woman who was our guide lived in a dormitory run by the Young Women's Christian Association, and the Christians, the old crotchety female Christians who ran the place, spent all of Sunday in church, and when none of them were there, the building had to be locked. So on Sundays, these people who paid rent either had to leave at 6 in the morning and get back at 6 at night, or be locked in for the entire day.
Wow.
And I remember saying, and nobody complains about this? and my guy looked at me as if it was an inconceivable thought.
Yeah. Amazing.
Because of course they were all Buddhists. They well, you either have to leave or we're locking you in.
Right. You go or stay, but that's it.
What a nice Christian attitude.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, it just proves the point that our definition of what is civil is constantly being refined, right? Then changing.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, and not always for the better. All right, I need you to make a call, Commander. This place has geological. Nobody's ever discovered it before, so it meets our criteria. But it's just such a dull tan. I can't imagine it being exciting when we get there. I don't know, of course, because the scanner doesn't actually reveal the planet in great detail. And the rarest elements there are, let's see, Molly, Ruth, and tungsten. And I think
it's got Molly, huh?
Yeah, it's got Molly. So it's a judgment call, and the gravity is.
I do not hear enthusiasm in your voice for this particular exploration, and I would. I don't know if this is possible, but once you go past the planet, are you allowed to go back?
Yes, but the odds of us going back and finding it, and if we don't mark it, are pretty.
Let's move on for a second.
Okay. All right. So we're going on to the next system because I just didn't feel it. You know what I mean?
Look for a planet that's kind of in an attractive sort of like off mauve.
Yeah. I'm looking for an off mauve. Oh, that's good. All right.
No, just a little more blue than usual.
Yeah, can we get that? Can we get a little more blue? All right, let's do that. Yeah, I mean, just after so many rocky planets, you're just like, you know what? I don't need to see that one. That one's not going to be special.
Our guide in Burma had learned the English phrase, I said, and if you reach a point in the day when you are templed out, just tell me and we won't go to any more.
When you reach a point in the day. You know what's funny, Larry, is when I go on trips and we're supposed to see things, because of my condition, I get exhausted with new information very quickly, especially when it involves walking around and seeing things that have historical significance or, that cause me to reflect. It's quite exhausting. So when we go on trips, it took a lot of work for Kathy and I to get used to the idea that, no, I can do one or two things every day. That's it. One or two. And then the rest is really just recuperation, relaxing, just absorbing. But we can't just see everything. It's not possible.
I don't have the excuse of a physical condition, but I'm right there with you. I would like if there are things that truly interest you, and you really pay attention, you just can't do that for 7 hours a day. I would like some of the huge museums like the Louvre. I would just have to decide I want to see it was usually not the things that were on everybody's list, like the Mona Lisa.
Right.
I want to see the Neil burial chamber. I want to see it. And after about an hour and a half, I would go, okay, I've absorbed as much as I can absorb, and it will become a task, and then an ordeal from this point forward if I don't just stop.
Right.
And I will, I'll end up enjoying it less because of the mania with just that you're only going to be in Cambodia once. You got to see everything.
Right. Yeah. No, I would rather spend the whole day in one part of whatever it is and kind of fully absorb it, and ask my questions, because of course I always then have questions like, well, wait a minute, why did you do it this way? And, you know, why is that more popular? And, you know, am I looking at what you think Westerners want to see, or are you proud? You know what I mean? Like, I want to find out more, but I can't do that with everything, right? And then I want to see, yeah.
I even with the friends who most of which are gone now, would go to museums with, I would say, look, let's, the speed at which I move and the speed at which you, there's going to be things I want to stop and stare at that will give absolutely no interest to you. And there will be things you'll want to look at that, you know, and listen to the, you know, the tape of that I want to breeze by. Let's pick a meeting spot and just both go and see the things we like to do. And which it would generally work pretty well.
Yeah.
Because I get stuck looking at, like, you know, a rock, like, you know, it's like, you don't want to see the Tintoretto? I said, I've seen it.
Right.
I think one of the big revelations of I think, to sort of project out into life itself, that happened for me at the Louvre the first time I was there, which was a graduate. I went with a couple of friends this summer after graduating from Princeton, and I'd taken a number of art history courses. And there's the Mona Lisa, and they also have a painting by Veronese of the marriage at Cana, which is where Jesus turned water into wine.
Right.
And we walked into a room where they have both of those pictures. And the Mona Lisa is about the size of a larger magazine like Bear Homes and Gardens or something like that. It's a
right.
very small picture.
Right.
And the marriage kind of covers the entire wall of a very big room.
Yep.
It must be 20 feet long and like 18 feet high. And it made me realize that I had subconsciously I sort of absorbed the idea that all great art was the size of a slide screen. Because back then, that's where we saw them. We saw them on a slide screen, and they were all the same size.
Right. That's how big they all are. I remember in Los Angeles, I went to go see Blue Boy up at the, I think, Huntington. I forgot the name of the place. Huntington Gardens. Yeah, they have Blue Boy. And I remember thinking, that was a very big Blue Boy. You know, did not expect that to be so large.
Yeah, it really was. I do remember that about it. I also remember thinking, well, you can certainly see it's technically really well done, but what's the big deal about this?
Yeah. It's like Swoozie Kurtz in one of the shows I watched. Everybody's all excited about something, and she's just sitting there grumpy, and she goes, I don't get it. What's the big whoop? You know?
A friend of mine from Princeton had a great line. It was about one of my antiquities. I don't remember which one. I think there's a kind of drug jar called an albarello, which you recognize it instantly. They're a slightly cylindrical canister, and usually have, arcane writing in Latin on the front of whatever drug is in there. And Richard was holding it and said to me, "Tell me again why this is nice."
Tell me again why this is nice. I need to be reminded. Well, that's like when Roxanne's Richard introduced me to cigars for the first time. I started smoking it with them, and I said, so this dry, burnt, acrid taste, this is what we're savoring, right? And they were like, yep. I was like, okay. Just wanted to make sure.
I could never get past the smell. To even consider trying.
Well, what did it for me was that whole phase. A few years after I left Hallmark and I was at Disney, the whole city, it seemed like, was doing swing dancing, and smoking cigars and drinking scotch. And I got invited, along with 700 other young men, to the Playboy Mansion by Johnny Walker label to learn how to sip scotches. And so that was
just getting to go to the Playboy Mansion makes it sound that's worthwhile.
yeah, no, that's all I needed. I was like, Playboy Mansion, okay, let's go. You know, so I ran around the Playboy Mansion and looked at history. You know, the petting zoo, the whatever, and then I sat dutifully in the large tent where they taught us about single malts and blended, and then I didn't really think much of any of it until many years later, maybe 15 years later, I suddenly had a craving for cigar and scotch. And I didn't know why. But I did.
Well, they planted something subliminal.
Yeah, they just put it in a place. And the trick with cigars, I learned, is the food. You have to have things that are overwhelming so that the smell of the cigar is just sort of, I don't know, the part of the overwhelming, right? And you've got things that can compete with it. Plus, you get a nicotine high that you wouldn't believe. Oh my gosh. Especially if you're like me and you haven't really done a lot of smoking or anything.
Right. I've never done cigarettes, so I've never really, I don't know what a nicotine high is like.
It's just a mellow. It just calms you down. It's just like when you take the cannabis, actually, except without the extra dose of dumb, right? All right, I didn't get that. I got a slight blue. This planet is a little bit blue. Let's see. As it comes into focus. We're going a little.
I hope it's the color that appeals to you.
Let's see. Okay. Oh, it's got some patterning. Let's see what we get here. Well, that is got some real wrinkles to it. Let's scan it, see what we get. I better hurry, actually. We're gonna be in its quote unquote airspace pretty quickly. Okay.
That looks interestingly sort of messed up on the surface.
Yeah, it's got those probably are canyons when you get down close enough to them. All right, we're gonna.
They remind. The first thing I thought of was the mistranslation of canali that ended up with people thinking there were canals on Mars. When the Italian astronomer was trying to describe canyons, and the word was a false cognate that ended up coming out as canal in English.
And they were like, canals? What? Yep. It's so much of history is like that. And, this last year, if it's taught me nothing else, it's that, all the really positive things that we really want to see in the world, you kind of have to go for them. You kind of have to, push to make them happen. Because they don't just happen, right?
That is very true.
Yeah. So, I've learned that. I guess I'm trying to process everything I've learned in this last year about the world, because I guess I had a more optimistic view of what large populations of people who were well informed would do. And so now I'm like, oh, okay. My definition of well informed is clearly not the world's definition of well informed. So let's recalibrate, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to probably be spending a long time thinking about how to deal with that, because if this project were to work, Larry, we'd have an artificial intelligence that was doing dialogue between billions of humans, right? And so the question then becomes, well, what would they decide to do, right?
Right.
And what kind of controls would you build in it to have some sort of, I don't know, safeties, but not a dereliction of duty to freedoms. So, you know, it's going to be it'll be interesting.
That's a tough one. Trying to separate out stuff which you know is some people are remarkably good at sounding like they are telling a logical argument, unless you really stop and you know usually somewhere in there there'll be one leap of faith and then everything else follows from that, and the leap of faith, if you go back, there's kind of no real. It's something. Well, I can't really tell you how they do that. You know, I know it's true like various with conspiracy theories. There'll always be that. Well, nobody knows that the state of Pennsylvania is actually owned by Russia.
Right.
How do you know that? You know, contest which I have to do. I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So since Pennsylvania is owned by Russia, then everything else follows in a logical way.
Right. Well, I remember many conversations that would follow that, where it's like somebody would say, "What, you know, you're having a really good conversation," and then you think you're connecting, and all is going well, and you think you found a common point on something. And then you realize they were, like, the person literally said, well, and of course, you know, the government controls the weather. And it's like, wait a minute. Were you basing most of this conversation on that? Like, because then we both started from very different points. And now I have to review every word that we said to each other to see how you could have still been in agreement with me, where you were starting from a world where the government controls the weather, right? Like, you know, that's a non-starter, right? You know, and I wrote a play once, a one-act play, when I was in college called A Ticklish Tale of Dread, and I created two characters in it, Fergus and Ken, and they worked in an office building that was very sleepy. But they both accidentally discovered that they both loved Judge Dredd comic books. And they loved Judge Dredd. But for Ken, he was an introvert and somebody who just really loved to collect beautiful art, right? And he loved to think about the future value of the comic books. And of course, for Fergus, they were it was the content. It was like they were a Bible to him, right? A guide to the future. And but for the first all the way until the climax, neither of them realizes that the other is, you know, completely incompatible.
Yeah. Sounds like a lot of marriages.
Yeah. So, and I remember writing it going, this is so unbelievable. And then I live my life and I'm like, I could have made it way more extreme.
On the flip side, in a very positive way, I haven't had a chance yet. I haven't seen that in conversations that we had, in which I made the reference to a fractal shift.
Yep.
And you just picked up on it. It was, you learn it in third grade, about those. And you're the only other person I know besides Jeff, who, first of all, didn't need to have it explained.
Right.
And already it was sort of part of how you saw things. it's always fascinating to find things that you just don't talk about to too many people because, first of all, they won't really be interested, and secondly, you have to already be in a certain place before you can even conceive conceive of imagining what you're being told.
Right.
And the day somebody goes, "Oh, I will put."
But you know, what's interesting is that there's got to be something that a person who doesn't understand what you mean when you say fractal shift, they still have aha moments, right? They just don't know how to distinguish them. It's like having 50 different words for snow or whatever, right? There's degrees of aha moments, right? There's the aha moment that I left the iron on. That doesn't cause me to change my worldview, right? It just causes me to run over to the iron. And then there's the aha moment that I don't realize it because but it just caused a major shift in me, right? I actually think differently now, and a whole bunch of things are going to happen differently in my life as a result, in the long run. And that's, but I think that people have a way of internalizing that, but they also claim a false flag on it too. Like a lot of times I'll be talking to somebody and they'll go, "Wow, man, that's really deep." And that's another way of saying I've thrown that away already, right? Like,
right. Yeah, that's really deep. Or it whatever it is you're talking about. I don't really understand, but I don't want to say anything negative about it.
Right.
And it is no interest in it. In my generation, it's heavy. Wow, that's heavy, man.
Yeah, that's heavy, man. Yeah, exactly. And you just go, all right, I guess we're stopping. Well, it's a beautiful view on this planet, but these canyons are just a little bit too deep and a little bit too dangerous. Couldn't get anywhere. But it's a beautiful view.
They're a lovely shade of teal, however.
Yeah, they got exactly the teal we wanted. Well, close. Oops. What's the matter? What's going on? How come we're getting errors? Oh, okay. There we go. Now we can get out of this planet. Alright, so, how are you feeling, Larry? Are you there?
Yeah.
You're muffled again.
I said, huh?
Alright. Well, I'm a little flyed out for the day. Let me just look at where we are on our route. Open galaxy map. And
oh wow, we've been at this for like an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah. Time goes by. So we covered this much distance today. We covered a whole bunch of jumps. We explored 3 planets, and we still have, whoa, a lot of jumps to go. A lot. That's a long way off. Let's just check how many jumps.
Let me ask a question that occurred to me, and I think I know the answer. Is when you're talking about productive dialogue, I was thinking the other day. I thought, well, I guess I've just been sort of assuming we mean dialogue in which both or however many people are involved in it received. I'm trying to explain where is all find something of value to them out of the dialogue, as opposed to, I mean, surrender your country or we'll kill, or we'll bomb Tokyo.
Right.
It's a productive dialogue, and the Japanese say, we surrender.
Right.
But only to one side.
Right.
So I'm assuming that when we talk about productive dialogue, it's just where everyone comes away from it feeling that it was of value to them in some way.
Yeah. So we're still working on a precise definition of productive dialogue, but yes, we are in agreement that whatever that definition is, it will include the concept of I was heard, and when decisions get made, I understand why I was in a minority position and didn't get what I wanted this time, right? Like I'm aware of why the group is moving in a different direction,
Right.
or why the algorithm couldn't understand me, right? Because those are the two scenarios that we're dealing with. And so you and I have productive dialogue, and all we're doing right now, I mean, this is our second episode, so we're just figuring it out. But part of what we're doing is just figuring out what an aha moment feels like, and then when we get more sophisticated about it, we'll start to, actually imagine scenarios where people aren't going to get what they want, and how would we figure out how would we figure it out, right? And when we get to that point, it'll be because you and I are playing roles. Like I'll be the minority of that position, and you'll be the majority, or vice versa, and or we'll invite other people on the show who represent topics that we really want to tackle, and then all we're doing is just learning for ourselves on the show. We don't have to write the algorithm on the show, but I may say things along the way where I'll be like, for instance, fractal shift. If we keep using that language, that's probably going to be part of the language of the algorithm, right? Because it's easier to train it that way, because it already has all of this language relating to it. So,
have you ever read anything about how when a colony of bees has to find a new home for whatever reason,
yes,
they send out scouts,
mm-hmm.
and there's sort of there are criteria that have to be met. It has to there's certain things like how tall. It has to be high enough off the ground to be safe. You have to be close enough to food sources. There's a bunch of stuff.
Right.
And then they all come back and they all do their dance of what they found. And the enthusiasm in the dance is observed by all the other bees who surround them. And the ones that are persuaded join whichever one is doing what they think is the right choice, until finally even the other scouts have signed on,
right,
to another bee's persuasion. It's very elaborate, apparently.
Well, yeah, because while that dance is going on, other scouts then go and double check and come back and do the dance either less than or as exuberantly, right? It's interesting.
Well, I went and saw it too. It doesn't look all that tall to me.
Yeah, Paul. I think Paul may be smoking something. I don't know. Yeah.
But just the evolution of like hive communication.
Yeah.
And the sophistication of the subtlety that can be conveyed, which includes feelings.
Yeah. Yeah, they're baked in. They're baked in.
Because the enthusiasm of what they're doing is a representation of excitement. And sort of, I knew about the dance and things like that, but I never really thought of these insects as getting excitement about something. And I thought they mostly just tried to find food, not to kill. At any rate, okay, first officer.
Thank you, Commander.
A good productive session.
Yeah.
Yep. I enjoyed this very much. And gosh, I was thinking last night. I was going to bed last night. I was just thinking. It was one of the most. I thought this is a little like the guy who called me from CBS. I thought that Michael Alcott, which was out of the blue, after years, call, and not just call, but call about something really, not just interesting, but right at the edge of my ability to even comprehend what it is, and ask if I want to part at a time when one of my major challenges is dropping away of my friends here, especially the ones like who you can talk about anything with. And I say when he was in high school, he learned Russian one summer, so he could read a book on astronomy that was only available in Russian.
Oh my gosh.
That was the kind of mind that he had. And so it was just the way things appear at the right time. And I think about all the years when stuff like that probably happened, and I was oblivious to it.
Oh, I think about those things all the time, but it I don't know.
And then that always reminds me. That's how anybody who finally gets it is that Larry. And it doesn't matter whether they go to the 23 or go to the 83. Everybody thinks it took them way too long.
Right.
To get it. And because I'm actually, my thinking is really different. It's not. I've learned to modulate my behavior and understand. And sometimes I do have to remind myself about them. It's 4 in the afternoon. I shouldn't even pissed at something that's stupid. Now's the time, so just drop it.
Right.
But mostly, it's about just the way I see the interconnected, and that those things that Einstein said he didn't even like to think about in quantum mechanics because they made him uncomfortable. Which basically appear like magic. Well, if that can be true of subatomic particles, we're made up of subatomic particles.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got this other thing going on, which is this conscious thing, which is that can be exactly defined, but the people who wandered around, the Grove talking about, hey man, we're all one, and the old drive, their version of it was simplistic, but the reality is there was a lot more they said.
Yeah.
That since we actually are all one organism, and that our brains are capable of managing that idea, and so we see ourselves as individuals.
Yeah, no, I believe that if we were to introduce this system, people would start to think of it as a natural extension of themselves. The challenge is not that it wouldn't work for people regardless of whether or not the algorithm was good or not, because people will put their own selves on top of it, their own perceptions on top of it. But just getting them to think about this as a mechanic of their lives, right? Because they already think about that. They just don't actually think about it. It's just sort of there, right? And all we'd be doing is making it, facilitating it, that's all. So
it actually is it's a genuine minority, I think, of people who think about the thinking.
yes.
Not just what they believe or what they think, but think about why they think that.
Right.
Or because it's difficult work and it can be uncomfortable at times. you only need a few friends who are like that, and I feel incredibly like blessed that the kid who ate the bologna sandwich looked like he starved to death at the front desk. Turned out to have as fascinating a mind as he had, and that I remembered you in a way that brought you back into my life.
Thanks, Larry. Of course I do. I mean, I've always thought about that. I just wasn't going to come to you if I was like, just, if I didn't have something, right? And it took me so long to figure out that I wanted to do this, right? Most of my life was basically just pursuing, a job or pursuing, some new knowledge or something. But now I actually want to build something, but I don't want to build it just like a better mousetrap. I want to figure it out. And of course, I picked something that's crazy hard to do. So it requires that concept of patience, that self-awareness. And so I naturally thought of you. So I'm just glad you're willing to do this, to make this time.
That is, as I say, that's a great compliment. It's almost as good as fighting my work with this. Not the unacceptable.
Right, Larry McMurtry. He's got the top spot, so we know that.
Yeah, I actually, Larry was a tough cookie. I guess he was always a rather dark personality, and he had a quadruple bypass. And apparently, one of the very common after effects of a quadruple bypass is a profound depression.
Oh, really?
And then he went into one, and he read that Iger had one, and wrote, never met the man, and he wrote him a letter, cold, and apparently what happened was, his secretary said, there's a letter here from Larry McMurtry, you want me to open it? He said, no, I'll open it. She said, the next 2 minutes later, he walked out and said, get me Larry McMurtry. And he's staying for the business people in the creative world who had really have the skills or to do what they were allowed to do, to move from a cautious stability to sitting in editing room when the thing was finally done and having they were re-editing some scene, finish with something and turn to me and say, what do you think? And I'd say, well, I think it's good with one exception, and it's like to see that's 2 edits. And then like that, I think that looks like the end of the scene. And then there's another 45 seconds, and that looks like the end of the scene. And I see what you mean. But just to be taken seriously by it was, and it was only possible because I went to Tucson with notes on the script, and in the first 30 minutes with it, I realized I was not going to get notes on the script.
Right.
Because I knew that all I would do was not really open to that stuff. None of it was that important, and the time was better used just getting to know it. And it turned out to be this really cool guy. And then I'm sure I told you on the way that driving back to the airport and said, well, I like this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I said, that's really nice to hear because I was really nervous about this trip. Why would you be nervous? And I said, well, because your name is Larry McMurtry and my name is Larry Striker. That's why. He laughed. So next week, first officer, unless something happens with you.
Yeah, and I'll try to work. I haven't edited any of the episodes to give them like an opening and a closing, but for now I'll just leave them as they are. So
I'm just so amazed that I can participate at all with this, remembering where I was when the first someone handed the computer, and I 5 minutes later handed it back to them. You know, before we sign off, you reminded me of something that you can only see so an extra number of things in a day, you know, and then you have to, you know, go relax and absorb them. There's actually there was a very acute 19th century English writer named Stendhal, and he did what everybody did back then, got enough money that he ran to Europe. And he was so overwhelmed in Florence by the great art in the 19th that a combination of dizziness and like nausea and disorientation. And we were actually given a name called Stendhal syndrome, which is overexposure to great art.
Wow, Stendhal syndrome. Yep.
And
What's the name of that syndrome that the Japanese people get when they finally arrive in Paris and realize that it's not as beautiful and as they expected it would be?
what's that?
There's there's this common syndrome where Paris is sort of romanticized so much in Japanese culture. But when they arrive there and they see how dirty it is and how not living up to the expectation of the myth that was created, there's like a breakdown that they have, like a deep depression, and it became so common in the streets of Paris for a Japanese person to be basically having one of these breakdowns that they gave it a name, and they actually would be on the lookout for it, right? That they would be like, oh, there's another one.
Well, I have to look and see if I can find that disappointment that an idealized version of something turns out to not exist.
Right.
Listen, any culture which worships Man of Green Gables already has a lot to answer for.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
I'll talk to you next week.
All right. Next week. Signing off.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Roger.